You know, the aerodynamics in this car are pretty good. We got all 4 windows open, yet the wind noise is not intrusive. I can talk and have a conversation, and you can hear me pretty clearly.
Yeah, it's great.
And you see how much prettier the car looks with all 4 windows down. Welcome to another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. I'm going to slow things down a little bit this week. You know, if you're a regular viewer, you know we've been doing a lot of high horsepower supercars and stuff. And sometimes it's fun to go back to my favorite class, original and unrestored. Now this car is not totally original, but it's been nicely maintained. Paintwork's been cleaned up a little bit, but interior, engine, drivetrain is exactly what it was back in 1975. This is a Jaguar XJ Coupe. I think it's one of the prettiest Jags ever made. This is the 6-cylinder model. They also built the 12-cylinder model. But to me, it just sits right, it looks right, especially with black wall tires. Sometimes through the American market, they would put white walls on these. And for me, it didn't quite suit the car. Let's meet the owner, Chris Glancy. Chris, come on in. Now, you're a designer by trade. Is that what attracted you to the car, just the sort of the clean shape?
Yeah, when I first moved to LA from New York, I saw all these amazing vintage cars, and you don't see them that often in New York City. So I knew I had to have one, and I went through a number of American muscle cars, kind of mid-70s, Novas and Camaros. Right. And once I got married, I knew that I wanted one that didn't reek of gasoline and set off car alarms, and something that once we had a kid, we could kind of go for a Sunday cruise. Right. So I kind of looked at Mercedes and then fell in love with this Jag, and particularly the XJC or the Coupe, because it has the pillarless design that really lets in a lot of the air and light when you're driving it.
And this is quite a rare car. They didn't do a whole lot of these coupes.
Yeah.
They did this, a 6-cylinder version, and they did a 12-cylinder version too. The 6-cylinder version is nicely balanced. It's a wonderful driving car. And it's really a pretty car. It's just a classic shape. You know, sometimes it takes 10 to 15 years to appreciate the shape of a car. Like, to me, the 53 Hudson Hornet has the same sort of shape to it, a lot of curves, you know. And it's such a pretty automobile. And the thing I like about this one is it just seems to sit right. You know, sometimes you see cars and something's a little off. One fender's high or whatever, you know, whatever it might be. Whereas this one just sits nice.
Actually, it sits a little bit lower than it normally when it came off the showroom floor. And when it was fixed up in '98, they did lower it just slightly, kind of for more of a hot rod feel than a classic British car. Also, the pinstriping was done by Butch Tucker, who was doing a lot of classic American cars and hot rod cars. He kind of studied under Von Dutch. Wow, okay. And he has a little signature on the back. Almost you have to get a magnifying glass out to see it. Yeah.
Well, it's very tastefully done. That's not the original steering wheel, that's an aftermarket.
Yeah, the one that came with it was a little bit more modern looking. Yeah. And when this car came out, the XJS came out at the same time. So that one looked so much more futuristic at the time compared to this, which had the burled wood dash and kind of went back to the older Jags in the 60s and 70s.
But see, as 20 years go by, this holds up better than the XJS.
It does.
The XJS looks a little bulbous. You know, this proportionally looks nice. The front and the back have almost the same amount of overhang, you know?
Yeah, there's not one bad angle to the car.
No, it's a very pretty car, and there's not one straight line on the car. It's all very curvaceous. You know, Jaguar's slogan was grace, pace, and space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what you had here. This is sort of the last link between the old school Jag, where you got way more luxury for your money. You know, this is, even though it wasn't as expensive as a Rolls-Royce or Bentley, the interior looked similar to a Rolls-Royce or a Bentley just because of the wood and everything. Yeah, Jaguar gave you a lot for your money. The engine is totally stock?
It is, yeah.
And it has 2 fuel fillers right here and one on the other side.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a toggle that you can manually switch between which tanks. So each one, I believe, holds 10 gallons each. Right. So as you see one getting down, you don't have to pull over. You just push the button and it kind of...
Yeah, but you have to fill each tank.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, that's really a pain.
And it seems annoying that you would even have a switch. Why doesn't it just pull from the 2?
Yeah,
but they did a lot of weird things back then.
That's the Jaguar way.
Yeah.
That's the way they did it. That's the way they did it. I love the wheels. Nice looking wheels. Those tires are probably a little meatier than what came on it back in the day.
Well, so yeah, the tires are the latest thing that I've put on it. They're the Michelin XWX.
Excellent tire. Yeah, great
Amazing tire. It took me a couple months to justify paying the price for these tires. But once I did, it really just improved the overall feel of the car. Because if you put a modern tire on the car, it just doesn't, the typography on the tire, all of that stuff doesn't feel right.
Well, it's like having an expensive suit and buying cheap shoes. Oh,
yeah.
I'm so uncomfortable walk. You look great, you're just uncomfortable walking around,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I noticed that. I got my Jag XJ120 over there, and I put a set of period correct, but new radials. Oh my God, it transformed the car.
Yeah,
It
you wouldn't think of it until you do it.
Yeah,
And it really does. So.
And when you realize it's your only contact patch between the road, I mean, you probably stop 100 feet shorter, maybe not that much, but certainly 50 feet shorter with these tires than you would with some cheap, you know.
Yeah, it's funny because I couldn't see the date code on the old tires, and the car got rear-ended, and I had to do some repairs on it just under a year ago. And once we took the tires off, well, actually, once it was fixed up, I go, okay, I need to get these tires off. Let me see how old they are. Turns out they were 15 years old.
Yeah.
And so the last thing I wanted to do, now having our new baby girl, I didn't want to have her get into another accident or something like that with old tires, so we put them on.
Can we open the hood? Let's see the engine compartment. Wow, boy, it looks like you just dropped this in there.
Yeah, so after doing the repairs to the back end, then I started getting really OCD with everything. And decided to take off the cam covers, and I hand sanded those down to get a nice finish on them. Started going into the power steering, really fixing it up. And we drive it quite often. It's kind of a Sunday driver for us, but I keep it clean.
And of course, anytime you have a Lucas Electrics, you want to have that battery disconnect switch.
Yep. Yeah, we haven't quite been able to find the full ground on this car yet.
Right?
So it always, we lose a little juice over the night.
Oh, beautiful done. How many miles on the car?
So the odometer, I think, says around 5,000, maybe 5,500, but I have a feeling it turned over since then. The previous owner, I found the car out in Erie, Pennsylvania, and he told me he drove it about 300 miles a year. I think I put maybe 300 to 500 in the first month that I got it, because I was so eager to drive it.
How many owners has it had? Any idea?
So I've tracked the car back to 2 owners before me. I found the car in Erie, Pennsylvania, and then it was originally in Santa Barbara. And so I think that owner bought it from one other owner before that. That was when it was first sold in '75.
And the 6-cylinder looks nice in here. You know, as much as I love that Jag V12, boy, every bit of space is taken up, and you've got vacuum hoses galore.
Yeah, all the fuel lines and vacuum.
Yeah,
it's a web of confusion.
Yeah, this looks very nice. This looks very nice. Boy, it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful car.
Thanks, Jay.
And nice, clean lines. And this is, with the exception, I guess, the steering wheel and the pinstriping, this is what it looked like when it left the factory. This is the original color, correct?
This is the original color code to it. Now, there's different British racing greens. It sort of varies a little bit. But yeah, it's the original biscuit interior and BRG.
Yeah, I always like biscuit interior.
Yeah, not tan. It has to be biscuit.
Biscuit, it has to be biscuit. Yeah. And the 3-speed, is that an American transmission?
Yeah, it's the Borg Warner.
Right, okay.
It's a clunky transmission, so this is not going to be the fastest car you've ever driven.
No, not at all, but it's a nice driving car. But it was certainly as fast as anything else back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's comparable to a Cadillac or any of those kind of cars.
And it's incredibly smooth. I mean, the V12 was probably a bit smoother, but to me, the suspension on this car is amazing. It has inboard disc brakes in the back.
Right.
For the time, I think it was pretty technology advanced at the time.
Yeah, very nice. Let's open the trunk. That's a good-sized trunk, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. They knew how to make them back then.
And did you restore this, or is this how the trunk was?
Yeah, this is how, it's just, this car, I've talked to both the previous owners, and it's been extremely cared for, and that's really how you have to find these cars, because if they've been neglected at all, it's just going to be so cost prohibitive to get them to this point.
And of course, dual exhaust, inboard disc brakes, 4-wheel disc brakes, correct?
Yep.
And the trunk closes with a nice solid click, doesn't it? You just go, oh, look at that. So you were born in Detroit. Now, was your family Jaguar people? That seems like it might cause a little bit of friction in Detroit.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. My great great-grandfather was one of the founding partners of Oakland Motorworks that then became Pontiac,
right.
and was acquired by General Motors. My great-grandfather was president of Pontiac and vice president of General Motors.
Wow.
And my grandfather worked with GM as well as being a financier, but he was who initiated the tank program during World War II with General Motors. So looking through family photos, everyone from my father, my grandmother, and my grandfather all had Jags in Detroit, which was, it's a risky thing, I guess.
Yeah, I would think so. One day, oh, it
know.
must have caught fire. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, you can't even rent a foreign car in Detroit these days.
No.
So yeah, I always saw these cars. I always thought they were beautiful. So my dad had a Jaguar Series 1 XJ6, the four-door. And in 74 or 75, he used it to tow out 2 motorcycles to British Columbia, ferried them over to Alaska, and then was the first to do the Alaskan Trail on a motorcycle.
Oh, is that right?
And documented the whole thing. So I grew up looking at this photo album of this car, but the four-door version, always kind of admiring my dad as a hippie biker, then later seeing how crazy it was to have a Jag in Detroit and tow out these motorcycles with it. Even to have a hitch on this car seems very
And what kind
odd.
of bike did your dad have? Was it Triumphs?
Yeah, he had a Triumph. I believe he had a Norton. He used to paint a lot of bikes, so he had a couple back then. He had a lot of other toys as well. He had that he didn't keep any of them. He had a Ferrari 275 GT B4 that he would pick my mom up from high school in. He had
Pick your mom up from high school. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
How old was your dad?
He was a couple years older. Yeah.
A couple of years older with a Ferrari?
Yeah, 5. He had a lot of toys as a kid.
Okay, this is getting dangerously close here.
Yeah.
Wow. How old is your dad?
So now he's about 70 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's a young guy.
Yeah, he's doing good.
Very cool. Very cool. Has he seen this one?
Yeah, so they came out, we just had our baby, so they came out to see her, and then right after seeing the baby, I pulled the car out of the garage as well. So those are my 2 things to show
And
them.
is this your first Jag?
This is my first Jag, yeah.
So good. Can we go for a nice, relaxing drive?
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds good.
Before we put on our seatbelts and go for a drive, let's go over the controls. A quite comprehensive dashboard, a lot of luxury items from 1975. You got air conditioning, got electric windows and all 4 windows. Still have a manually operated mirror. No mirror on that side. That's just a few years away. What do we have here? So you got fuel, and what? You have a switch here, which switches from one tank to the other. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
Yeah. So when you hit one, it will then transfer to the other and tell you how much fuel you have in that one, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, and then you have, of course, your water temperature, tachometer, speedometer, tripometer, oil pressure, voltmeter. And then you have here headlights and side lights, fog lights, all of that. Same thing here, lock, accessory. You have a modern radio. And this is what?
So that's the temperature for the AC. So you can go from 65 to 85 on it.
Right, and you got 2 ashtrays here, 2 in the back, so because you'll have 4 people just smoking constantly. You get lung cancer by the time you get to the fence out there. And this was really a luxury package. This is pretty much standard in every Toyota Corolla now, but back in the day, locking glove box, that was a big deal. Heated windshield, windscreen, what is that, map light?
Yep.
Okay, that's up here, right? Where's that?
Yeah, that's right there.
Oh, right there, there you go. Yeah, like you're gonna put the map right there.
Well, you open it up.
You open it up there. So, very good. Okay, we'll put the windows up. We'll go for a ride. Let's start it up. Let's see how quiet it is. All right, put the windows up, put our seatbelts on. We'll go for a ride.
Yeah, I was having problems when I would go on these long trips. Going uphill, the car would start to kind of slow down a bit, and the gas pedal wouldn't be responsive.
Yeah.
And I had a leak in the carburetor, so I had to replace and rebuild all of that.
Right.
And then since then, it's been great. I could go up any hill.
I like the small steering wheel. Hey, my knees aren't hitting it.
Yep.
And it's perfect.
Yeah, and the wood is pretty close to what the dash is, so to me it looks a lot better than the one that came with it. And the horn button, it took a while to find that. That one was an eBay find.
Yeah.
And this car wasn't even really for sale when I found it. It was a YouTube video that the owner's son had made. He had just got a digital SLR and started making little videos, and posted this one, and I came across it, and it luckily had the owner's email, so I reached out to him.
Yeah.
And he was kind of on the fence if he wanted to sell it, and I ended up just flying out to Erie and meeting him and hanging out with him for a weekend to kind of just look at the car, and
Wow.
he decided to let it go.
And the car does shrink around you. You know, it's It's actually a pretty small car, but it's plenty of room in it.
Yeah, all the windows really help. And when I was first looking for cars, I wanted a convertible, and my wife is really fair-skinned and redhead, and she was like, "No, I can't do a convertible. I'll melt." So that's when I started looking into the pillarless coupes, because once you have all those windows down, it really opens up.
Yeah, it feels very executive saloonish.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really comfortable ride, and for me, it changes everything when you get in it. You just go a little bit slower. It's not by any means a daily driver, and I'm taking it out maybe once or twice a month on a Sunday.
It's very turbine-like. It's very smooth.
And so when they said that the V12 is even smoother, I haven't driven one myself, but it'd be hard for me to imagine being much smoother, because it feels really natural.
Sailing? Yeah, Lincoln could drive this thing. Yeah. I don't think they made these with a sunroof. Maybe they did.
I don't think, maybe it was like a dealer option that they would cut it open, but I don't know if it ever
you don't
came.
want that. You better, as it came from the factory.
I always kind of prefer it without a sunroof, because it's just a point of leaking or rust or any kind of open.
Whistling.
Yeah. This car is known for having bad sound dampening because of the windows. I guess when they designed it, they had to create some sort of pulley system to lock the windows in more. Because at certain speeds, I don't know how fast this thing can really get up to, but they said that they were kind of popping out.
Yeah, it would expand out.
Once you hit 60, maybe.
Actually, not a lot of wind noise. It's almost as quiet with the window down as it is with the window up.
Yeah, I've driven on the freeway with all four down, and you can easily talk to the person in the car. You know, going back to what their campaign of the space, grace, and pace.
Right.
The thing that really sold me on this car is it was such a great balance of all three things. You know, when you get a 911, it's really stripped down. It's all about the driving experience, but you have a plastic dash and nothing really fancy on the interior.
Right.
And this one kind of had beautiful styling on the outside. It drove well, although not fast, and then it had the great interior, you know. So
yeah, it is timeless styling.
And given the time of '75 when this came out, it was already sort of dated in the sense when you're looking at an XJS, everyone was kind of like, that's the future of Jag, or so they thought, you know. So
now, did it come with this Macintosh stereo, or did you put in?
I've put it in. It's just sort of a placeholder there now, because it's not hooked up. I need someone to do the wiring for it. But the Macintosh, even though I grew up with my dad always having Macintosh, a big cabinet of all the glowing blue lights, you know. But this unit didn't come out until the 90s. It was a partnership that they had with Clarion, I think. You know, Jag always gets a bad rap around this time, but mechanically, I think they're really dependable. It's just the electronics that go on them.
Yeah, and Americans don't know how to take care of a car. A lot of people, they buy it thinking it's an American car, which just keeps running and running. It takes a bit more finesse.
A lot of the older mechanics that know these cars inside and out are also retiring.
Right.
So it's harder and harder to find someone to work on them.
But it's a very nice car to drive, extremely relaxing. The seats are very, very comfortable. Yeah. I mean, it's very supportive, and it's really like grand touring in this one.
That's what I was looking for, but I also wanted something that felt a little sporty in the body styling. You know?
Oh yeah, I agree.
There you go.
Yeah, it feels good.
Find a little something in there.
Certainly no better or worse than a Cadillac of the period.
We put some new fancy spark plugs in it, and I think it gave it a little bit of a umph. Maybe found a couple
fancy
extra.
spark plugs, those are the best ones.
Yeah, they have the two prongs, you know.
You want to pay a little extra for the fancy spark.
Yeah.
Runs nice and cool.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with it overheating, which always makes me question, is the gauge right? And you can hear the AC. It's this weird sort of early computer gearbox. We fixed it once and it was working every day, and then it kind of sat for too long, I think.
Such a beautiful car with all four windows down.
Oh, I love it.
Because this pillarless coupe, you know, it's almost like the feeling of a convertible. It's really quite impressive.
Yeah.
You know, the aerodynamics of this car are pretty good. We got all four windows open, yet the wind noise is not intrusive. I can talk and have a conversation, and you can hear me pretty clearly.
Yeah, it's great.
And you see how much prettier the car looks with all four windows down. It's a perfect day for a car like this in California. Not too hot, not too cold. Just a slight chill in the air, so you have the heater on low. Probably about 67 degrees, something like that, but a bright sunny day. And this paint really pops in this sunlight. Was a nice driving car.
Yeah, I always think about what these cars were like back in 1975 when they came out,
Yeah.
and how modern the drive must have felt back then.
Yeah, this would have competed against the Cadillac, the Pontiac Bonneville, the big Thunderbirds. And to most Americans, why would I pay extra for 6-cylinder when I could get a big V8?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Get more muscle under the hood.
yeah, exactly. And kind of makes sense, I guess, but this is one of those cars you really have to drive to appreciate it.
And so many of the details stood out to me that, you know, a lot of cars in the 70s weren't built to last. And this
Right.
was, everything was considered, and all the materials that were used in it were really, you know, it kind of stood the test of time. And they look as new today as they did probably when they came out back then.
Yeah. You know, pillarless cars are usually pretty noisy and window whistling and, you know, going down. But this doesn't have that. That's probably the original rubber in there too, isn't it? Or do you place that?
Yeah, I believe that all the rubber is original, and I was going to, the weather stripping on the windshield was looking a little tattered, and I didn't want to risk popping out the windshield and possibly breaking it. So
Yeah.
everything has been kept to the original rubber. I use this one solvent that really kind of keeps everything looking black and full of moisture.
But the nice thing about this car is it's still reasonably simple enough to work on.
Yeah, you open the hood, and you're not even meant to really open the hood on modern cars
Right,
these
right.
days. You got to take it to the dealership and let them plug it in. And surprisingly, a lot of original parts are still available on this
Yeah.
car. If I need, mechanically, if I need something, there's a number of suppliers that I can call, and most of them have everything in stock.
And this engine was built basically from 1948 to, what, not that long ago?
Yeah.
10 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, the root of this engine was, it won Le Mans, right? Back in,
Right. I mean, this
late
is
60s.
England's version of the small block Chevy.
Yep.
The most versatile engine. This was in sports cars, sedans, limousines. Yeah, I mean,
One of the conversions that people do are putting 2 or 3 Webers on it,
Right.
instead of the SUs, and I wanted to keep it always as original as possible,
Right.
just for when you open the hood, that nothing is really kind of blaring as being
Right.
a modification.
well,
or
even
anything
worse,
like
a
that.
lot of guys put 350 Chevys in them.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was pretty common. There were a number, I mean, when I first came to California, there were a number of shops, that's all they did.
Yep.
Jaguar V8 conversions. You know?
Yeah, the first car that I actually saw of this was they had a LS1 in it.
Right.
And I took a seat in the car and I fell in love with the body, but I really wanted a car that had
Yeah.
everything original to it.
Did you drive it?
I didn't drive it, no.
The problem with these is they're just labor intensive.
Yeah.
You know, that's the trick. Things are just, it wasn't built to be modular where you go, oh, take this out and put this in.
Yeah.
That won't go in unless this goes here. You put this, you know.
It's
like-
often a conversation where we say, okay, if we're going to do that, it means we have to take apart the dash, and
Right.
what other problems could that lead to? And
Right,
are we
right.
just going to live with it for now, or
Right,
are
right.
we going to kind of take on that challenge?
Right.
But it's also great because it's because it's not such a valuable car. I don't know how anyone really can enjoy these multi-million-dollar cars, because I'm stressed out about this one, where I
gotta
would
admit,
park
it's not
it.
bad.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you got enough to not worry about.
You know, I got that. I bought my F1 McLaren in '98 for $800,000. People thought it was crazy.
Yeah.
And the one at Pebble Beach sold for 17.5
Wow.
million.
Insane.
It's like crazy. But it's true. You take it out and you go, oh, where am I going that's worth this kind of money?
Yeah, I always think in advance, where am I going to park it, and
Right.
things like that. But I still get it out and enjoy it because they're meant to be driven and meant to be enjoyed. And if they sit, they just begin to rot. You know?
Yeah, that's the worst thing. These tires are great tires.
Oh, yeah, I love them. Not only do they handle well, but then they look great as well. So,
Yeah, these are buying supplies that be screeching now.
yeah. And they add a little of the suspension to it as
They
well
do,
because they
yeah.
got that big sidewall.
That's what I like about these older cars. You got an 18 or a 17-inch tire. So did your dad like it?
Oh yeah, he loved it. Yeah. I asked him what happened to his Jag, and he said that he ran into a cow. When I first got this car, you know, there wasn't a ton to fix on it, so I took all the gauges apart and replaced all the light bulbs. Was doing any minor work, just because when you get something, you want to kind of
Right.
put a little work into it. So I was really nitpicking little things.
an enjoyable car this is to drive. It's just very relaxing. It's very smooth. When you put the windows up, you don't hear the helicopter like you do right now going overhead. But you know, it's fun to drive with the windows down. This pillarless coupe, you have this, you know, normally you'd have the pillar here. That's why they call it pillarless coupe. It doesn't have that. But the window seals very nicely. It's quite quiet. We were able to carry on a conversation with the windows up and down. It was fine. The seats are really comfortable. You know, I've driven so many hot rods and restomods the last couple of weeks. So, and just kind of nice to just kind of float along. So, Chris, thank you very much. And thanks for saving this piece of history. This is a real collector car. And when your little girl is, what, 3 months old now?
7, yeah.
7 months old. Okay, so in another 20 years, yeah, she's going to appreciate this car.
Yeah, hopefully.
See you guys next week. Bye-bye.